I've titled it, you can see what I've titled it. Go ahead and go to the next screen, please.
Yes.
So here, I'm not going to just read this to you, but this is a little brief summary, and you'll see some of the ideas that you all had are here and more. So the idea of lineage, that's there. I think it's the one thing that Nikki touched on is that we live in the world, we marry, we raise families, we participate, earn an honest living. That's a standard, but I have to say there are Sikhs that break the law. We're just like any other group of people. We do stay involved in politics. That's something that I put in there because there are some faith traditions that refrain from that, but Sikhs don't. They participate. And lots of you talked about serving human rights and things like that, and you saw that in there. This is a picture, a portrait of Guru Nanak. Now, remember, the Sikh religion is pretty young. It's less than 600 years ago. So there are paintings from the time that are maybe romanticized a bit, but reasonably accurate, that show what they looked like. It's not like a photograph, but I think the unique thing about Guru Nanak is he traveled with a Hindu and a Muslim, Mardana and Bala. And he himself wore clothing from both traditions. Remember, it's like Jesus or even Muhammad before he formed the tradition. It wasn't there. There wasn't a Sikh faith. What he started doing was traveling around because he saw strife coming. He saw the strife between Hindus and Muslims, and his way of bringing people together was to compose sacred songs called shabads and sing them. And you just sit down under a tree, because most all villages had trees. And remember, this is a time when they would travel by cart or foot, or horseback or donkey back or camelback, and that's what he did. Next slide, please. And then here's that concept of lineage. And this will show you the order that they were leaders. And they were called gurus. I can send you, if you put in the chat that you'd like to receive this PowerPoint, through Vasu, we can send it to you. So you don't have to read every single thing. But you'll see there's highlights of what each one did. Thank you, Joan. That's great. And then you can go to the next slide. And then there were 10 Sikh leaders. Oops, go back one. There we go. There were 10 Sikh leaders. They ranged in age from a child, Guru Harkishan, to a very old man. Guru Amar Das was older. Some of them didn't live very long, like Guru Harkishan. Some of them lived a longer life. 2 of them died as martyrs, and one of them, Guru Gobind Singh, all of his children died during the time when they were struggling with Aurangzeb and the Islam at that time. It was sort of, I want to make it very clear that we're not talking about Islam as the peaceful entity that is promoted by most Muslims. We're talking about the caliphate, much like ISIL is talking about. So or very maybe like the Christian nationalist agenda, that very conservative, hostile to faith traditions, to a polyfaith country, tradition. And Aurangzeb was the emperor who was the main person, the main leader at that time, who was forced conversions and murder and, torture and using those techniques. Now, go to the next slide, please. And then the last Sikh Guru, which is the current one, is the Holy Scriptures. And that's what the holiday that I'm going to talk about at the end of the PowerPoint is about, which is Baisakhi or Vaisakhi. It's when the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, the Holy Scriptures that were gathered by the Sikh Gurus, some of their own compilations, but if you look, it has Hindu Bhagats, Muslim peers, and contained within it. It has some of their writings. All of it is set to the Indian rag and can be sung. It's meant to be either recited or sung. And it is still we treat it like, we call it Babaji, which is like, talking about a beloved grandfather or something. So we treat it both with respect and family coziness. Can you go to the next slide, please? Here are some of the traditions. Again, I call them traditions rather than requirements, because we don't have something, well, we do have something where you can do things that are really egregious to the Sikh community and be removed from being a Sikh, but there has to be really egregious. It's not just about how many times did you do your prayers or your banis, as we call them. It has more to do with how you hurt people in the community. Oh, Lisa asks, what country or region is this lineage forming? I think she means, where did it start? In the north of India and what is called the Punjab, the land of 5 rivers. That's the seat of the Sikh faith, in a city called Amritsar, where the Golden Temple is, and the main Sikh seat of worship is. But you can see they reflect many of the things that you knew about them. And it's really lovely that even if you don't think you knew much, you knew some of the core ideas, some of the core traditions about the Sikhs. Can you go to the next one, please? Now, this is to give you some idea of diaspora of the Sikhs. It was part of the tradition within India to send often women out to start communities. We're talking 600, 400, 500, 600 years ago, when this was not commonly done. And that the position of women in Sikhi has some tension because there's so much cultural patriarchy, but at the same time, the Gurus did a lot to contravene that. They abolished sati, which was the widow burning, where the widows were thought to have to go on to the cremation and be cremated along with their spouses if their spouse died. So this shows you some of the diaspora around the world. And this is from 2004. So the next slide is it's similar, but it's a little bit different. It gives you an idea of sort of major populations and numbers. There's and diaspora has been forced. There have been forced diaspora, as there are with a lot of communities, but there's also been encouraged to not to proselytize. We're not proselytizing, but to go to places where there's harm happening or need, and to try to serve people, feed them, take care of them, offer them aid. can you go to the next slide, please? Now, one time, one person said they thought Sikhs only wore white. And so I put this picture in to demonstrate how colorful the colors of turbans can be and clothing can be for Sikhs. Can you go to the next slide, please? Now, the Sikhs have a strong military tradition, which Johnny touched on. In the center is a black and white photo of the Sikh army before the World Wars. And then the modern picture, it could be World War I actually. And then there's a modern picture of uniforms and turbans. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is from World War I. They always brought the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib with them into battle. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is a World War II veteran. I'm not sure if he's still alive. And then this is a modern American veteran. There's him in the US Army in his turban. Wait, go back one, please. So he had to, we had to do some legal battling to allow him to wear his turban. But it succeeded. Can you go to the next one, please? Now I'm going to show you some people. This is Sadhari Singh. He was a 9/11 subway driver at 9/11, during 9/11. And what he did is, rather than leaving, he stayed in his subway car and took as many people as he could out of the area via the subway, as long as he could. Then they turned around, the company, and tried to fire him because he had a turban and a beard. So needless to say, there was a lawsuit and he won. He did not lose his job, nor did he lose his turban and his beard. Can you please go to the next slide? And here's just going to show you different ways that Sikhs serve. There's a Queen Elizabeth and her Sikh guard. Go ahead. There's women in India cooking up flatbread, rotis, much like tortillas, unleavened. There they are serving in either the Philippines or the Malaysia, serving langar to people. Go ahead. This is in Haiti after the earthquakes, serving food. Go ahead. This is, and they're serving the Yazidi when they were being under turmoil. This is a school in India serving food. This is now this is now the Ukraine. They're continuing this tradition in the Ukraine. Now I want you to look at this. This young man here with the blue in the jeans and the white turban, I knew him when he was a teenager. His name is Simran. He's from Germany. He's now an adult man, and you can read this, but basically he traveled to Odessa. He ended up, that's where to rescue the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib and other special Sikh artifacts and bring it to the UK. And this is when he returned to Derry, yeah, where there's a Sikh museum, and they'll keep them there safe until the Gurdwara can open again. Here I am at the Tucson AIDS Memorial with the AIDS ribbon and this is Guru Harai is seen as the one who was most into climate change and understanding that. And he had a sanctuary for endangered animals in India at the time, as well as really preserving plants. And he had a rare apothecary with rare medicines that were used to save people's lives. And so the Sikh symbol, that that Khanda, Adi Shakti, is seen as a main Sikh symbol. And this is the image that's used by the Green movement within the Sikh community. Now I'm just going to show you different families, Sikh families. See, not everybody keeps their hair. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. There's some girls dancing in the kitchen in India where they were at school. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. These are, it's this girl. This girl. I knew her on Facebook. She's now married and lives in Texas, and we don't talk as much as we used to when she was a teenager. And that's her mother, and there's her mother again. Go ahead. That's a good friend of mine. He has a twin, actually. He's one of two. Go ahead. There's a woman, BBG. Yeah, go ahead. There's some Sikh boys. Go ahead. Typical motherhood, yes. Lovingly looking at your child. Go ahead. Actually, that was in Haiti, and she was helping rescue children. There's another family, yeah. Go ahead. Gathering of women, go ahead. Actually, no, that's Phoenix, the Phoenix group. Here's a family gathering of mine, my extended family. The sadness of this is it was my brother, one of my brothers died. We gathered to honor him, but this is our extended family. Go ahead. There's two of my foster daughters. Some of you know B. Go ahead. There's another one of my foster daughters. I was much younger then. Go ahead. Okay, you sometimes wonder about my hair. Wonder no longer. This is my hair. It's very long. I quit cutting my hair when I was 12 years old. It has gone more silvery now, but it's long. It's long. Go ahead. Now we're going to look at Vaisakhi. I love this image because Vaisakhi is part of Vaisakhi. Vaisakhi is about celebrating the military willingness of the Sikhs to defend people. And I love this silhouetted image. This is a martial art called Gatka, which can be done with swords or sticks or wooden sticks. And I love it. And a lot of times they leap in the air like this. This guy is like Nuria dancing in the air. Go ahead. And this, it's very traditional to take the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, which is in the center with that kind of truck that has the fancy stuff on it. And in front of them, at the formation of the Khalsa, rather than having the idea of having a human as a guru has transitioned in the Sikh tradition by Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Guru, so that we now don't look at people as gurus. We look at our holy book, our Shabads, the word of God, the Bani, as our guru to seek the wisdom. And there were 5 men that were in a ceremony, which will be a link so you can go read the long story, were baptized and given turbans to stand out. Because that's the other thing, to stand out so that innocents wouldn't be mistaken for being Sikhs. And so traditionally, there's always 5 men or women or a mix that are chosen to lead the Nishan, the parade. Actually, Nishan is a flag, to lead the parade, and they carry the traditional Sikh flags. And this is a gathering. This probably, I don't know, it could be London, it could be India, I'm not sure. Okay, go ahead. And they also do displays of skills, riding. Go ahead. Go ahead. And then here's some kids in a Baisakhi kite. This is recent. Look, they've got masks on. Okay, here's a video to show you some Bhangra that's also dance. This is much an integral part of Sikh culture, is the Bhangra, the village dance. Uh-oh, what happened to the sound? We need the sound.
Okay, I will put the sound in a moment.
And start it from the beginning because it's funny. And
Yes,
get that sense of humor that Nikki talked about.
Of course. Looks like now you can hear my sound.
Kind of halfway, yes, it's rolling, and then you saw something. Not first off, I heard something, and what did you hear? Hissing sound like this. Then dingo. Something smacked the ground, knocked me clear out of my chair, like this.
Can't really hear the music too well, I'm sorry. Has really a good music with it. When you play it on your own computers, you'll hear the music better. I can't hear the music at all. Oh dear. Oh well, always glitches. Bhangra has a very unique music style. It has a big drum, a tabla, that is played like a heartbeat in the background of all the other music. And if you listen for it, you'll hear it kind of going lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. You know, it's very, I really like it. It's a very steady rhythm of the heartbeat. Okay, since we can't hear it, well, there's one more piece I want you to see that's kind of a nod to hip hop. I wanted to get to that point. Here we go. So the other thing is it has no rigidity in terms of adding traditional styles to it. Okay, you can stop it because we can't hear it anyway. And they can play it at home if they want to. This is a link that you can copy and Vasu put it in the chat if you want to look at a longer story about the history of Baisakhi. It will be celebrated this year on April 13th. It goes with the lunar calendar, a moon calendar. Okay, go ahead. This is the Golden Temple. A very beautiful photo of the Golden Temple in Amritsar with the nectar tank, and you can see all the lines, all the places where people are walking into it. This is that center of the Sikh community in India, and it's sort of like the, you know, like the Vatican would be for Catholics. It's very beautiful. That is gold, by the way. It is covered with gold. And then these are, you know, just a symbol to show you that Sikhs honor all traditions. Not every tradition is probably on there, but a lot of them are. Thank you very much. I think that's the last slide.
Thank you very much, Sadhvir. It's a beautiful presentation, and we appreciate that you do this presentation for us. We are very grateful to learn from you. And now we have this time for Q&A. We can ask questions to Sadhvir in the chat, or you just unmute yourself. And I would like to ask you, Sadhvir, What is the most important holiday for your faith community?
The one that's happening. I guess the most well-known, the one that is used to interact with the world that doesn't know about us is Baisakhi. But we honor when the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib was installed, the Guru Gadi, it's called. We honor the Jyoti Jots, the times when the Sikh Gurus, rather than their births, we tend to honor the times when they Jyoti Jot. That's when their small light went into the bigger light at their death. There's a holiday we do honor, Diwali, in our own way. We light up, the Golden Temple is lit to honor it. There's also another Hindu festival called, can't remember what it's called in the Hindu tradition, but Guru Gobind Singh, because it was a time of great drunkenness, Guru Gobind Singh tended to created a holiday comparable within the Sikh community called Hola Mahalla. And it was another time when they would celebrate together and show off their writing skills and their Gatka skills and kind of, bring forward the Sikh traditions.
Thank you, Sadhvir. And we also have a question from Lisa in the chat. If you can tell us more about the rite of baptism, when is it done? By
Amrit.
age, by request, by merit?
Let's see, I want to look at it. Oh. That's a good question. It's called Amrit. All Sikhs you can take Sikh vows to become a Sikh, but you can do a deeper commitment to the tradition called Amrit and become an Amritdhari Sikh. I've done that. And it is a ceremony developed by Guru Gobind Singh. I believe it's, you're not interviewed or you don't get a questionnaire to fill out. It's something that comes from within a person. It tends to be, they want the people that do it to have passed into adulthood. So they're making an informed decision about it. It's not a secret ceremony. You can go and witness it if they're doing it. You need 5 Amritdhari Sikhs to perform the ceremony, because that's the Panj, the 5. Panj means 5. Punjab, the land of 5 rivers. The Panj Pyari, the 5 beloved ones. And this is a corollary to theology. Lust, anger, greed, pride, and attachment. Pride or ego. Yeah. That's a corollary to the 5 friends that you have to combat. You have to understand that are within us all. So I chose to become an Amritdhari Sikh. I'm also, how do I explain this? I am a converted Sikh. So there's always kind of a tension. Even though we're not supposed to have a hierarchy, there's still kind of a tension, with sometimes Sikhs who are in India considering anyone who's left India to be less of a Sikh. And certainly there has been strong prejudice against some of the converted Sikhs. And some of this has come out recently more strongly because the founder of the group that I've been part of before I understood what Sikhs to become just a Sikh, without the 3HO Foundation or Sikh Dharma, it's come out that he committed tremendous sexual abuse. And not just him, I mean, several of the supposed leaders within the community, you know, and money abuse, financial abuse and things like that, mistreatment of people who were devoted to the lifestyle. So that creates even a greater tension about it, you know. And I don't want to hide that. I want to acknowledge that that's going on, and our community is in the throes of negotiating that, you know, and that's just reality. So there is some concern about cultural appropriation, but I've talked to the Sikhs that I work with here, and I mean, they see me as a Sikh, but I'm still kind of marginalized in a way because my skin is white and I don't have native ability to speak the language. I can read it. I can read our holy book, but I don't have full understanding of the language, you know, so, you know, I'm in a liminal space, but they also see me and the service that I do in my turban, and they really appreciate that. So, you know, we negotiate these things. Some traditional Sikhs are virulently racist against people of dark skin. I mean, virulently. And that has been something we've had to negotiate. Some are homophobic, particularly out of India. So we've had to negotiate that, you know, and work with that. And because of my openness and my position on these things, it helps to shift within our local community into a more open, welcoming space. So that's maybe more of an answer than you wanted. And to me, that's almost more important than the ceremony, is how do I serve? Because that's when I took that ceremony, it set, my commitment was to a life of service to humanity. And that's, you know, what it's about.
That's so beautiful and deep, Sadhguru. Thank you for sharing. We have many other questions in the chat from Judy West too. Is there a wisdom text or sacred book one can read to learn more?
Your voice isn't coming through too well. Let me see if I can.
Thank you. Yeah,
it was about, okay. Okay, where are we? Oh, goodness. Okay, we got
6:14.
that. Okay, there we go. Wisdom, yeah, the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. That's the sacred book. Also the prayers, the daily prayers are often in what's called a nitnem, N-I-T-N-E-M, and you can often find, you have a large Sikh community there. You can probably find someone who will share with you a transliteration of those prayers as well. I mean, the Sikh scriptures, it's 1,480 pages. I mean, it's a big volume. When it's I have a copy that's transliterated. It has the original Gurmukhi. It has a transliteration of the Gurmukhi, and it has an English interpretation. It's 8 volumes. So this isn't something you just kind of pick up to read, you know. But you can also go to SikhNet, SikhNet, on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, on the web. And there'll be transliterations of the poetry, the shabads there that you can look up, and translations. Some of the more poetic translations you're going to find there. I mean, it's kind of funny, the older British translations, because they have this kind of literal rather than a metaphorical sense of translating. And it's kind of, it tends to be a little more almost humorous actually, and awkward. Does
Thank
that
you.
help? Okay,
Yes.
let's see, what's the next question?
From Lisa, how is water used? Full immersion, a sprinkler?
Oh, yes. Okay, water, okay. During the baptism, it is, you hold your eyes open and it is sprinkled in your face. Just a few drops, hand sprinkled. Yeah. But you can, at the Golden Temple, you saw that big tank of water. People go there to bathe for healing. It's seen as healing waters there at the Golden Temple. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And there's
From-
legends behind that too. Okay, next, the next question.
From Nikki, who is allowed into the Golden Temple? and
Anyone.
how they been there?
It has 4 entrances. You cover your head, you take your shoes off, you wash your hands and feet, bathe them, and you don't have to go into the nectar tank and bathe to go in. Anyone. It's deliberately with 4 entrances, and anyone, they serve 10 to 100,000 people food every day there too. Yeah.
From Joanne, is Sat a little or term of honor?
It's part of my name.
my.
It's part of, we do have some titles, but I don't know. I don't know why you would have a title if in an egalitarian, non-hierarchical. So I would never do that. My name, Sat means truth. Satabir. Bir is, it has several meanings. Courage, like in take heart, warrior. It also means the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib, when it's contained in one volume, is called a bir as well. But generally, my name has been translated to mean heart of truth. Kaur is all Sikh women have that in their name, irregardless of age or status. All Sikh men have Singh. I'm not sure what trans folks are doing with that. I've seen people use both, but that's in development right now, because this is, with India, you're dealing with a more conservative, and then throughout the world, mostly it's the younger people are more promoting this openness.
The next one from Johnny. Is there tension in the United States between white Sikhs and Punjabi Sikhs?
Absolutely. I tried to describe some of it. Yes. Yes, there is. Yes. Did you want me to talk more about it, Johnny?
I don't.
Guess not.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Okay. What would you like to know, Johnny? What would you like to know?
I think maybe he have an issue with the microphone.
Okay. Well, let me talk about it in several ways. Traditional Sikh culture is a bit macho, okay? Patriarchal. So mental health issues, there's going to be a tension between how converted Western Sikhs or younger traditional Punjabi families deal with mental health issues contrasted with the more older generation. Now, these are things that you see in many cultures and many, aspects of communities. So, because mental health, it's like you're supposed to turn to the guru for everything, right? So how can you have a mental health issue? Well, the reality is people do. So how do you negotiate this almost magical, substantial belief that the guru is the doctor, the guru is the medicine. That's all you need with the daily realities of living life when you're hungry or having issues with depression or bipolar, or any of these things. And there's also then, how do Westerners look at it, and how will it be looked at within the Punjabi Sikh community? There's a tension there too. That's one example. Racism is another. Racism has permeated cultures throughout history. And unfortunately, the Sikh system, the Sikh tradition, is not free of that. And again, it's younger people tend to explode those ideologies, whereas older people tend to hang on to them and not understand why you would want to change them. That's very generalized, but I think you see that within lots of communities. And then there's some of us old folks like me, 71, that, kind of have a different idea about it. I've always tried to approach things more openly as I learned about different communities within our one community. So that addresses some of it.
Thank you. Next one is from Lisa. How does the Sikh and Islamic communities maintain their theological and collegial relationship today?
Well, it's easier here. It's easier here and in places like UK, but there's occasionally I'll get emails that talk about Muslim men marrying Sikh girls to convert them to Islam. Mostly that comes out of places like Indonesia and India. Aurangzeb is who I talked about, the emperor, who is more like ISIL and ISIS, the caliphate. Guru Nanak, when he came, he had a conversion, he had a revelation experience where he sort of went into a river and disappeared. People thought he drowned. We don't know where he went. But then 4 days later, he came out of the river, and his first words, well, they were in Punjabi, but the translation is, there is no Hindu, there is no Muslim. We're all God. We're all from God, or the great, creator. And Aurangzeb honed in on this as being an insult to Islam and used this as a way to suppress the Sikhs. Now you have to understand, the Sikhs are a very small portion of the larger Indian community. They're like 8% of the whole population. But if you look at statistics from when partition happened, which was when Britain was being forced out of India, and they were very angry and bitter about it. And that's when they drew lines to create Punjab to create India and Pakistan. The Sikhs were arrested and 90% of those imprisoned during partition were Sikhs, even though they were only like 7-8% of the total population. And 80% of the people put to death by the British Empire that were Sikhs. So because of their unity and their ability to to fight, their military skills. They were seen as a threat, and they were seen as a threat by Aurangzeb, who went to war against them. And so there are still residual tensions, much like in the United States, there's still tensions about the Civil War, for God's sakes, There's still tensions about that in India. And some of that carries over to here, but there's been a lot of work done by like interfaith work, like this group, and the Jewish community here in Tucson, and I assume in the Christian community, like particularly after 9/11, after 9/11, Balbir Singh Sodhi was assassinated, was killed by someone. Frank is his name, who saw his turban and said terrorist. Now, Frank also went and shot up a Muslim home, but nobody died there, thankfully. So it was very scary for Sikhs at that time. If you look at Valerie Carr's movie, Divided We Fall, Sikh Americans in the Aftermath, it reveals sort of the history of racism against the Pan-Asian community from very early days within American history. But at that time, there were Sikh students at the University of Arizona. I gathered them together to form a club because parents were terrified their kids were going to get killed. They were just terrified. And it disrupts their schooling if they're pulled out at the beginning of a semester, in the middle of their schooling. So I pulled them together. We developed the United Sikh Association, USA, on campus. We got the support of the president. We published materials about Sikhs and had forums and things like that. Well, none of those youth were pulled out by their parents because they felt, because of the gathering together, the community support. The community support didn't so much go to Sikhs as it went to Muslims, here in town, in Tucson. I'm assuming it did in Phoenix as well. There was an upswell of reaching out to the Muslim community at that time to go with them, to go grocery shopping, to go on errands, to be present at the masjid, so that there would be witnesses if there were attacks. There would be some barriers to allow worshipers to go in for their services. Well, we did that here too. And that most people didn't know about Sikhs, so it became a time of kind of working together and learning to understand each other. And we had a lot of really good interfaith dialogues, multi-faith dialogues. We created the Tucson Multi-Faith Alliance, and the Muslim community definitely participated in that fully. And when Oak Creek happened, where Sikhs were shot, the whole community, we had a good war. So many members, including the mayor and rabbis and Christians and Baha'is and Muslims, they all came out in support of us, because that's one of the ways community is with you, is when you show up. It's been harder with COVID, but once again, when the Jewish synagogues were defaced, it was my first in-person gathering, and the Muslims came out to it. Muslims joined us. So those bonds have been building and strengthened because of what happened at 9/11, more than anything else, and I think that it's important to understand that it's too bad that tragedy brings us together, but it does. It really does.
Thank you, Sadhguru. Next
Yeah.
question is from Reverend O. What is the basis of the Sikh military tradition and how historically have it been manifested?
Oh, thank you. You know, I believe in nonviolence. I really do. And so talking to Sikhs about it, but the Sikhs also believe in nonviolence, but they believe in the right to defend the defense. And so Guru Gobind's, the military development, was started mostly by Guru Hargobind, and then carried on by his son Harai, and then brought to use by Guru Gobind Singh when Aurangzeb started attacking communities. And they try everything they can to be peacekeepers and nonviolence, but they are willing to fight, to defend, you know. And that's one of the reasons they have, like much in the Philippines, they developed special martial arts skills so that they could counteract a more modern, larger army. The Sikhs did the same thing. Their martial arts skills allow them to stay safe within a much stronger, larger army. Okay. And despite the fact of how Britain treated them, when they heard, in World War II, when they heard about what Hitler was doing to communities in Europe, they signed up in droves to go and fight and defend those people. They served in, they served in areas where it was Japan fighting, like in the forests of Burma, in Burma. They served in Burma. I talked to a son whose grandfather was there, and they had been captured by Germans in Burma, and they knew the forests, so they just waited till night and slipped away and could never be found. And so they became kind of a guerrilla faction, and their goal was to release people there, and they fought in the European and Australia in those war theaters as well. And yet, when the war was over, they weren't treated with respect, but they didn't. And it's not that they didn't care. They kind of tried to mitigate it by making people aware of what they were doing. But I know that Franklin D. Roosevelt, often, I think it's him, who credited some of the winning of some, I better not talk about that because my memory isn't clear enough, but they have been credited with turning the tide in some of the different places, you know. So even though they are denigrated, even though they have to fight to wear their turbans in modern armies, Sikhs are still willing to do that because they believe in a larger reality than just turning their back on people because it's challenging and they're not looked upon with respect. You know, there's a place in I meant to tell you this. There's a place in a city, which I can't think of the name of right now, that one of the Sikh gurus had a gurdwara in, and there was a large Muslim population there, And when he had pathways built that were covered so that the women could go to the masjid in a safe way. That's how much he cared about supporting Islam. You know, that he had these special pathways built that were secure for the women to travel to the masjid. That there's still, if you search on the internet, you'll find stories of Muslims preserving gurdwaras and Sikhs preserving masjids, even today. You know, it's, you know, that still happens out of respect for each other.
Thank you, Sabir.
Mhm.
Next questions from Hilda in Spanish. It's great also to have this bilingual connection. And Hilda say, what are the core values or your faith tradition?
What are the
Core values.
core values?
Yes.
Well, I would refer to the PowerPoint. You know, what drew me mostly was, you know, supporting the human rights of all individuals. I take that very literally. You know, I heard that's a funny way to say it, but I take that to heart, you know, and I've dedicated myself. You know, Gandhi is a very icon for people, but the Sikhs have a very complicated history with Gandhi and the caste system, which Gandhi was from. You have to understand that, you know, that scene, any of you have seen the film Gandhi, that scene where the Sikhs are being slaughtered and you see them dropping children into the wells to save them. That's real. That really happened. And it's a complex history, but very simply, you know, there were no cell phones. Gandhi said, oh, they must have done something to bring this on. They hadn't. This was during Baisakhi that this happened. There was a change of leadership in the government from the British at that time, who posted signs in English about how, you know, any insurrection would be looked at as violence against the, you know, the empire, and they would be, you know, it would be ended, you know, and they weren't revolting. They weren't, they were just celebrating Vaisakhi. And it was misinterpreted. And so the British came in and had the Gurkhas shoot them. What exacerbated is they would not let them get medical aid. That's why many died. They would not allow medical aid. You know, that's because, again, the fear of the strength of the Sikhs. There's someone here in Tucson whose father survived that massacre. You know, this is a very real, and just like most of our parents never talked about World War II, she never knew it until a reporter came to interview her father. She never knew that he had survived that because they didn't talk about it. Just, you know, so they're just like other communities that way, where you don't talk about stuff. You keep it, you know, keep it secret, you know, you move on, you know. So the Sikhs have a very complicated relationship to Gandhi. So I often have to negotiate that when talking about nonviolence with them. On the other hand, National Geographic had this wonderful photograph of Sikh Sikh soldiers, peacekeepers, who managed to save the gorillas, the animals, from guerrillas, the fighters who were killing them because they could sell them for money without firing a single shot. They negotiated with them. You know, so Sikhs do that is their go-to, is nonviolence. You know. So core values are like that. They're, you know, to look at the human before the reaction. To see humanity. Does that make sense? Yeah, good.
He'll say thank you. And the next question is from Lisa. Are there international famed gurus in contemporary teachings and practice? And what is the Sikh view of afterlife?
We believe in generally reincarnation. I'm tempted to speak very colloquially. You get to keep coming back every time you F up until you don't. No, we believe in reincarnation, yeah. But also the goal is to, not just after death, but in this lifetime, to experience that peace of merger with all, with the infinite, and bring that back and live that peace into the world.
Thank you, Sabir. And are there international famed gurus in contemporary teachings and practice?
Are there, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
If there is international famed gurus.
Female.
No, they were all men. It's a patriarchy. But I want, it's really important to think about the caste system at that time and what they were, the environment they were in. And yes, it was patriarchal, absolutely. Except that the Sikhs often sent out, the gurus sent out women to start communities of helping in throughout India. That was part of the diaspora. And women were educated, women were taught music, women were not restricted. But Guru Nanak, he wrote this beautiful Banda Chamiye, Banda Nimiye, which is a praise song. It was written for the men of his country to understand that there is nothing that comes through this world that doesn't come through the womb of the woman. Nothing, except for the infinite, uncreated being that started it all, who is not male or female, has no gender, has no fear. Yeah. He wrote that. It's in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, and it's, it was written deliberately for the men to get it. So that was 600 years ago. Pretty progressive for the time, for sure. I asked once why there weren't more women ragis from someone I was learning some kirtan from. And he said, oh, there's no difference. And I said, wait a minute. And then he said, okay. He said, look, the Sikhs were hunted. They had to hide in the forests and the jungles to stay alive. And who do you protect first? Your women and children, because there's no future if you have no women and no children. So he said, I think a lot of the patriarchal values grew out of that fear of wanting continuity, wanting to preserve continuity.
Thank you, Sabir. Next comment from Nikki. It sounds like the situation in Ukraine could benefit from Sikh soldiers. And next question from Lisa. Are there contemporary prophets?
No, we don't have a prophetic tradition other than, well, Guru Gobind Singh, Muslim soldiers were just regular people, and royalty treated them like cannon fodder, right? They didn't respect them any more than they respected anybody else, they were just cannon fodder. So they would feed them these stories how Sikhs were demons and would desecrate their bodies when they died and things like that. So when they went up in battle against Guru Gobind Singh, and then the reality was that that didn't happen. They weren't desecrated. There was valuables were put with their bodies so the families would have a way to bury them, to take care of themselves. And those that were injured were cared for. As a matter of fact, that's part of the model that was used for the Red Cross, the Swiss, when it was the Swiss Red Cross, and there were Sikh generals that were very angry that this one man who was a healer was treating everyone. And they brought him to the Guru and said, you've got to tell him to stop. He's, these are the enemy and blah, 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 and he said to the Guru said, okay, well, is it true? Are you doing? He said, yes. He said, well, why are you doing? He said, because this was the time of Guruship, because everyone I look at, I see you. I see the radiance of the infinite, and I must just treat them. I don't care who they are or where they're from. There is no enemy. They're just human beings needing to be taken care of. And the Guru Gobind Singh said he gets it. He gets it more than any of you get it. That's what it's about, and say the question again. There's one more thought I had.
There is contemporary prophets.
Prophecy.
Yes.
So at the same time, the Islamic army surrendered to Guru Gobind Singh because they saw they weren't demons, they weren't desecrating them. And he told them that, he gave them a prophecy that those who held to the peace of Islam would spread around the world and become a strong, great faith tradition.
Lisa, you have your hand.
I do. Just for clarification on their last question, your last response there, Satbir.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking more for contemporary voices in the Sikh faith. What is it growing? Is it evolving with contemporary prophetic voices of young people? Taking this beautiful tradition and moving forward with it with a new voice, a new prophetic voice. And
well, I shy away.
Kind of respond to that.
I shy away from the use of prophetic.
Yeah, and I shied away from even using it because it has so many connotations.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to clarify. Let's say a new voice, a contemporary
well, yes, that's
voice.
Why there's that's why there's shifts in racism and homophobia, in understanding of transgender folks, of support for same-sex marriage. Because the younger voices are progressive. They are, but they would not claim to be prophetic in any way, shape, or
Understood. What about changes in like the chants and the music and are you seeing differences with the youth movement and voice through the prayer and the chant form and such?
Sure. I mean, when my generation created music, we used kind of rock, folk, bluesy kind of things, and we learned traditional shabads as well. Then the younger generation got into hip hop and rap, and there was a real pushback by the older generation within our community. And I know that I was the adult who went and defended their use of rap, in our musical cafe at our summer solstice, because this is, and I reminded people that we used our genres and they're using their genre. Let's listen to them. Let's give it space. So yes, there is. And Bhangra, which is a more folk style, is influenced by all of these genres as well. So you see changes in that. There is a sense of traditional music that is also being preserved, which is very important. It's like you don't want to lose the original voices and the original way it was. You want to preserve that and have developments as well. And you'll see that in many communities, many communities. Does that make sense?
It does, and I appreciate that. I was trying to get a sense, and you know how a lot of the main traditions tend to have kind of this reformed group that breaks off a little bit, and you know, certainly coming from the Episcopal faith, where you know, came through at a time where women were ordained, and so that was a major thing. And looking at you know that part of how Protestantism was being reformed, and certainly you know the fact we know some very beloved female rabbis. So there's been reformation that's occurred in Judaism that has allowed for some really remarkable changes, and we certainly see it oftentimes now with the current pope and some of the papal you know reformative actions that he's taking, and a lot of these things being driven by youth and by women. So I was just curious as to getting a sense if there's a little bit of that effort happening within the Sikh tradition as well.
Well, there's a lot of it, but you have to understand we don't have a clergy structure. We don't have that. We have to be
Correct.
We have to be ordained in order to meet the legalities of marriage ceremonies in the United States and other countries. But anyone of any age can perform any of the functions in a Gurdwara and do. You know, I mean, it's usually simple. Like the children start out handing out napkins and when they learn to reading the hukam at the end of the service, or reading the translation, or you know, playing a beginning shabad in the service. But yeah, that I mean, it's you know, these things are all encouraged and supported. We do not have a clergy structure, so you're not going to see as much of a push for reformation in that sense, where all of a sudden now you have women rabbis, because we don't have that. You do see things like in maybe not so much in India, but outside of India, you'll see the 5 Panj Pyare leading the Vaisakhi parade will often be women. You know, that's kind of where it gets reflected in things, in some of that kind of thing. You know, it's very rare for women to form kirtan in the Golden Temple in Amritsar, but they have. And so that's shaking up too, and will continue.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Sabir, and all.
How are we doing?
We are very good, and now we are very grateful with you, Sabir, for this presentation, for this Faith One-on-One with the Sikhi community. And we can close our space together with a prayer. And also to remind you, here in the chat, I will share with all of you that next time we will have Faith One-on-One Buddhism with different schools of Buddhism and in the framework of Buddhist celebrations. So Sadhguru, we will close with a prayer.
I'll recite something, I'll chant something from Guru Gobind Singh, although I don't have the full translation handy. Chatra Chakravarti, Chatra Chakra Bhugate, Suyambhav Savan, Sarabada Saraba Jugate, Dukalang Vranasi, Dialang Sarupe, Sadayanga Sange, Abangang Vibhute. Chatra Chakravarti, Chatra Chakra Pugite, Suyambhav Sobham, Sarabada Saraba Jugite, Dialang Nasi, Dialang Sarupe, Sudayanga Sange, Abangang Vibhute. That's the last lines of a prayer that Guru Gobind Singh wrote called Jap Sahib, which is done in a very rhythmic, most of it's done in a very rhythmic way, as if you're on horseback, galloping your horse. But the closing is about the infinite beauty of God, of the infinite, of what we all come from and where we all go to and what we all want. Thank you,
Very
everyone, so
beautiful.
much
Thank you.
for asking me such
Beautiful.
great questions. I learned so much myself tonight. Thank you so much.